Hey, what's up? Darby here with GenAIU, and in this video, you're going to be seeing an over-the-shoulder look into our Creator Plus Mastermind, which we host monthly inside of our community, along with the other workshops and trainings and events that we produce. And this mastermind was a pretty cool demonstration of Claude 3 and how it is able to help us with executing these buyer's briefs. And this is the first time I ever ran the recipe before inside of Claude 3 because it just came out, and our book is coming out available for pre-order right now on March 14th. The Amazon release for Kindle and paperback is going to be pushed back just a little bit, but you can pre-order it and get access to the digital copy of the book and all the resources March 14th. And you'll see literally inside of this mastermind a top to bottom creation of a blueprint, a buyer's brief, strategic creative brief, brainstorming questions, micro content, all in real time. And we've got a lot of really cool conversation as well around it with the different members inside of the mastermind, sharing ways that they are utilizing the buyer's brief and the workflows, ideas for how to apply it in your business, whether you're a solopreneur or you're a B2B marketer working on enterprise level applications or anything in between. There's so many use cases for these buyer's briefs, and it's a powerful tool and something you can weaponize for a specific use case to your business that I think you'll find some ideas and insights here inside of this mastermind. So check it out and let me know what you think about the recipe. And if you've been using Claude 3 as opposed to Claude 2, or if you're using OpenAI and ChatGPT 4, then let me know how all of these tools are working for you. And if you've ran the buyer's briefs in them, how's that going? How are you applying what we are creating and producing inside of this book so that it's helping you grow your business? Let me know in the comments, and always make sure you like and subscribe to this video to stay up to date with GenAIU and all the things that we are up to. And so all that said, let's go ahead and kick things off. See you on the other side. Hello and welcome in everyone to the Creator Plus Community Mastermind on March 7th, 2024. Tuning in here with a few members of the community. Talk about what's coming up, what we've been up to, and good to see you guys here, Kevin, Bruce, and Charles. Boy, what a month. What a past few weeks it's been in AI, huh? We got a lot of stuff coming up here. We got the Mastermind meetup next week. I'm excited about that, and I've been really enjoying playing around with the new Claude 3 updates. Anyone else have been seeing what Claude's been up to? Seems like finally got out of the timeout for me for giving some attitude for a while. See you nodding your head, Kevin.
Yeah, I went on last night for the first time and just let it rerun prompts that were in chats, and the results were pretty stunning. It just seems to understand. I don't know what your feelings are about it. It's making more logical arguments, and it's bridging things a whole lot better, as opposed to just really stark statements paragraph to paragraph.
Yeah, I noticed that pretty much right out the gate for me. It seemed like it was a massive improvement from where I was running into issues the last few months, where it was just being a little bit harder to get to go in the direction I wanted to. Charles, have you been using it?
I have for the last couple of days. I actually took your output that you sent me this morning, maybe, where it had two different avatars. It had the neuroscience and then it had the real estate. And I just basically asked it to separate it out. And it took it a little bit to get what I was after, but because it was just giving me the core outline. But once I gave it a couple feedback, it started doing it with good fidelity. That's saving me a bunch of time just from that standpoint. It does seem to have, it feels like it's reasoning more. I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess that's how I would characterize it. It just seems like it's in the responses, there's more reasoning going on. That's my take. I don't have a lot of other output yet to try. Most of the stuff I do is pretty straightforward, like taking a YouTube video and transcribing it really quickly so I can see if I want to see what I can get from it, if I'm going to take the time to listen to it, things we probably both do intuitively now.
Yeah, I've been using it extensively the last 48 hours in getting this book ready for publishing and going back through a lot of the sections that I put together and just like, all right, help me with just refining this and saying it better and what I'm trying to really get at here. And so it's helping make some of the structure a lot simpler to do, which traditionally I'd never done probably. But I've just been putting it off, but I'm like, I just know that I'm going to be able to use Claude whenever it's time. And I've just been powering through these case studies and setting up a lot of stuff, which ChatGPT has been a good help with that the last few weeks, but it's a breath of fresh air to not need to know that Claude's got a little bit more reign for me right now. And in analyzing the case studies and all the buyer's briefs that we're putting together, it's doing a really good job at pulling out stuff that is just helpful, that I have just a different, again, maybe a different AI perspective as Claude's looking at it. But it's hard. I can't really pick out like a lot of the nuances that I'm finding, but it just seems like it's being a little bit more intuitive than it had been the last few months for me anyways.
Is it running the buyer's brief for you, or are you doing that in chat?
I wanted to even test it out on the call today if you guys would be down to see how much it could actually do.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, this thing is pretty great, but anyone want to just take a stab? We could do I could pull up Claude and we could just fill out a content brief. And I've been doing a lot of edits on the manuscript today, so I could grab the book manuscript and see how that would work with it.
Did they increase the token length for Claude 3?
I think it's 200K. So I don't remember what it was before. I think it was like, what, 120?
No, it was 100K. It was 100K before.
Okay, so it's 200K now on the window, but it also has an intake. It claims the enterprise level will have a million either tokens or words. I can't remember which, but it's going to be a huge intake that it can handle, but it won't be able to. It's still going to be limited to that 4,000 whatever token window on the output.
Oh, okay.
We'll see. Let me see if it'll do one of these briefs. I haven't tried it in Claude or ChatGPT, just running an entire brief at once. But I've been getting some really long responses from Claude. So let's see what it does.
Supposedly it can remember back a long ways into the session context or the knowledge base. So that's going to be huge for long form writers.
Charles, while Darby's doing that, are you the one that had the very detailed, 50 attributes on how to do tone and style?
I think that was John Munsell.
John.
I don't think that was
John.
me.
Okay.
But I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I would really like just to get to a point where I can build a custom instruction or pre-prompt or something, or a data source that will sound like me and not have to do tons of editing afterwards. Do the work up front and make that happen once. Because I feel like every time I'm starting over and I'm getting ChatGPT, and then even though I tell it right in a professional business style tone, whatever, don't use jargon and it doesn't sound like me.
I find that. Go ahead, Charles.
Uploaded content of yours, like a significant amount of content that's you.
I've done that on a couple of 3 or 4 blog posts that I've written myself, and then have it describe my tone and style. But then when it comes to actually write, it still doesn't sound like me. Yeah.
Is that in ChatGPT or Claude?
ChatGPT. I've not tried it in Claude.
Are you using the custom windows in ChatGPT?
Custom instructions, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't been.
Put your instructions in there and see what happens for your voice.
Okay. I'll try that. Sorry, Darby, go ahead.
No worries. Anyone want to be a volunteer? Good to see you, Derek. Want to volunteer for some content brief or maybe a project you're working on, or otherwise we can see how to.
If you want.
Let's do it. Go ahead.
So this is executives and entrepreneur founders, and I've got an AI business integration readiness survey that will then turn into a custom report for them. And so this is all about the problem of having them integrate AI into their business more than just learning prompting, but helping them develop a strategic vision for how AI will work in their business long term and transform their business. And I apologize. I'm in my car for about 10 more minutes, and then I'll get in front of a computer and be a little easier.
No worries. Yeah. Check that out for context. And say run the buyer's brief. I'm just going to start with the blueprint and see how it does in the outputs.
Okay.
Wow. Because it sure wouldn't run 4.0.
To be clear, you just attached the brief document,
or
the blueprint document. and then wrote my little description.
Yeah, I wrote your description, and then I copied the first section of part 2 of the buyer's brief book, which is going to have just the raw recipe.
Okay.
And so you would basically just copy this entire section here. I literally just copied it verbatim, and I typed in the user input inside of Claude just because it needs to have that reference. And so now it's moving on to like section 1, the master's buyer blueprint.
Wow.
Like I ran it a couple of days ago for something with the book, and then I like got distracted, of course, and looked at another tab, and then I came back over. It felt 3 minutes later. It might not have been that long, but it was still going. I was like, what is going on?
It's doing it fast too.
And so usually with ChatGPT, I will run it just like the primary goals and the secondary complaints and ending with the positive feelings. And then I'll just run that as a section. And then I'll run the overview for the psychographic deeper dive, and then individually the sections of the blueprint. And so it's anywhere from probably like 5 to 10 copy pastes if you're using it split up like that. I'm interested to see where this stops because we gave it the entire blueprint. And so
Did you say you gave it the entire blueprint or just the first part?
the first part is the blueprint.
Okay, gotcha.
Right? So I gave it the entire blueprint that we have that was okay. So it went past it now. So now we're on to the dreams. I feel like we're betting on a racehorse right now. Anyone want to throw $5 to keep my credits going? Good to see you, Kelly.
I feel like that's the key to using this is not trying to put the entire document in because it uses too much space up. That's what I'm experimenting with is the more upfront stuff you put in, the less output you're going to get on the back end. I still think that's the case. So by limiting it up front with a portion of the entire workflow, you're going to get more output, I would think, because it's adding input and output together for the context window token amount, I think. Did that make sense what I just said?
It did, but I'm not sure if it's going to, I don't know if that's like the same for how Claude is operating now.
Well, I looked at the specs and it indicated, I'll see if I can find it. It indicated that there was still that 4K limitation. So
yeah, I guess I haven't tried doing this version of the recipe in Claude in ever. So this is the first time I've tried this version, the longest one. It's going to be in the book like this.
So this isn't the market sauce one that we've had. This is a different one.
This is pretty much what we've got from like the 5.0 to like the 7.1 version or whatever that we've been at most recently. But this is going to be what's in the book as the full recipe there, which of course we're going to keep building on it. So it's going to have the majority of the ingredients from everything that we've got right now, and then we'll just keep building on it inside of the larger automation that we're doing in Make. This is pretty wild that it's still going all the way to the primary cause defined. ChatGPT.
When it stops, what we should do is copy that and dump it into something that can count.
There we go. We made it all the way to the primary cause. So what was that, Charles?
I'd like to count the words and see how many you have here.
Yeah, let's do that. And I bet I can just say continue and it's going to keep picking up where we left off. Copy. What is that? Just like word counter? 2,500 words. I can't hear you, Charles.
I would think that's about 3,200 tokens.
Okay.
So if you had about 800 tokens on the input, that would be your 4K right there.
But that's on one output, you're saying, is what it's limited to? Or is that going to hinder it? If I say continue, it's going to start forgetting, is what you're saying?
No, each output will give you the 4K. So you can say continue and it'll continue because it can remember back 200K. So it'll take your input document plus everything you've got so far and still continue putting out. The longer this gets as we go, it's going to start eating into that 4K window at some point, but it should be a lot longer before that happens.
Like we could have
because I think the prompt, I think if I understand it, I'm probably wrong, but if I understand it, the prompt technically is your new input and its output. Bottom line is it's going to do what it's going to do, right?
It's writing with more emotion than it has been. It's just not being quite as clinical with its output. It's if you told it to write something in visceral, emotional language right now, it might go over the top. Who knows? Because it's already doing it.
Hey, Darby, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you were to scroll up just a little bit on that last batch of 10 items there, just on these bad habits, for example. So what inputs from your document are causing it to produce the particular outputs? In other words, what are you giving it to get that? Let's just say.
Let's just say bad habits, for example, in this doc, and this is the draft for the book right now. Where were we at? Bad habits. So this is the input. And so it's mapping all of this stuff compared to the content brief above and all the context that's getting fed into it. And so this is the individual prompt that you could run just for bad habits if you wanted to. Which I think is important because like this is obviously a lot of prompts. Sorry, just people watching too, is like, it's totally cool to run each one of these individually as well and really build on top of it and be much more methodical, because that's how we started with these in the first place. And so it's like nice to see it run at once, but also there's a lot of value in slowing down with this and being really particular about each one as it builds, because then you'll just get a better feedback loop as you run it. Continue, Charles.
No, yeah, that's perfect as well. It's amazing to Kevin's point, how well it's articulating not only in its prose, but in its detail of content on just from that output. I mean, basically it's going out there and finding it and pulling it in pretty well. Obviously, if you know your avatar, you're going to know whether it's on point or not, but it sounds good, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so this would be like where Bruce, you're obviously the one that gave the initial content brief. So this is where your eye is going to be more like the determining factor as to what you're going to move forward with or not. But from just reading this, I think there's a lot of good stuff in here that you can build from.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you don't mind dumping this into a doc for me, that would be awesome. And this is going to help me for what we're going to do next week also, because I need to be able to take this massive amount of information that comes out of this brief and then put it into some, compact branding messages.
This is going to produce a document, Darby, correct me if I'm wrong, but probably in excess of 40 pages in Word or something.
And then that's what we're producing right now. And we've got this to a point with using Make for the automation process that it's around like 35 to 40 minutes, like generating a report like that as well. And so that's what we're going to be building on the mastermind next weekend. We're going to be brainstorming how can we integrate that process. And again, with the book on top of that, just this blueprint alone is more than we were doing with the original blueprint, because we added a lot more of these different prompts for the different elements of the blueprint that were based on the Copy Pro. If you guys remember back when we were starting this with John Benson and Jasper, someone was describing Jasper as like the DOS for Windows or Apple or whatever. It's just, that was what everyone had to use. And then all of a sudden everything showed up, and, the rest is history in the making, so to speak.
And that was 18 months ago? What was it? Was it even 18 months ago?
November 2020.
Okay.
Was when chat came out.
Yeah. And you were doing Copy Pro before that though, right?
We started the Copy Pro thing with Jasper, I think around this time in like March, April of 2023.
Yeah, about a year ago. Yeah.
That's close to 2 years.
I remember when you had John on the call, or going through that. So I would be curious to know what you think based on what you're doing versus like John and some others, or let's say copywriters, A-list copywriters, Ray Edwards, different ones are putting out their own version. Mm-hmm. There's also Mike Filsame, which with his Groove. Some of them are more just simply marketing oriented. How do you feel like you're differentiating yourself from them with what you're trying to do here with the blueprint?
I think it's a good question, because I've been thinking a lot about that as like working on the book right now. And I think there's some important distinctions with softwares like Benson now that John is growing. So it's very specific to direct response, and you can create blueprints in there, but it's very specific to like the direct response copywriting side of things. And that's not what the buyer's brief is necessarily about. It's more about giving you the foundational blueprint and the strategy and the content and the questions that will inform bringing your ideas to market faster and being more of that foundational, like you need to start with the person that you're going to be marketing to anyways. And so how do you put yourself in their shoes and start any campaign, regardless of where you're at inside of your business? And because it's got a lot of different use cases, there's a lot of room for us to build on top of this. And like in Kelly's interview, when we did that in January about her creator brief, she's just sharing different ideas. And I'd love to hear more, Kelly, about like where you see it even now that we're like 2 months, 3 months from that initial blueprint, how you've been seeing the next stages of where you're going with your content strategy. But I think content production at the end of the day is more of where we're settled in at in terms of the buyer's brief and how does it inform your content production, make smarter marketing decisions. And that's where it took a lot of different book cover iterations, as you guys saw in the community, from buyer's brief to 270 something iterations in Canva, different subtitles. But discover what drives your best customers' buying decision in seconds is like, how do we condense that time to really just give you that ability to look into a market, see where people are coming from, and be able to make an informed marketing decision based on that, and then use that to inform and then iterate and innovate your products and your messaging to connect with that market. And direct response copywriting is a huge aspect of that in terms of your messaging, but also educational content like Kelly teaches on, storytelling. How do you actually translate this into your messaging? And then how do you take the data that you get from the feedback from your actual market and then run this again with the additional response so you're continuing to stay up to date with where the pulse is of your market? I hope that kind of like shares a bit more about, that's where I see it being a little bit more differentiated. But I would love to get your guys' take too on like where you are using the briefs in your own business, because and there's so many different uses. And Kelly, is there anything that you've seen in the last few months or learned from that initial kickstart to the year in January to now?
Something that I think has been helpful, I'll start off with, it's easy to get overwhelmed if you try to figure out, how am I going to use all of it? So that was one thing I realized, was I was like spinning because I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much good information. So what I do that's been working really is I always have it open. And when I'm generating copy, when I do something like help me write an email that addresses X, Y, and Z, and here's the call to action, and I look at the email and I go, seems the last 10 emails that I've sent out, I'll pull in the fears. And I'll say, rewrite the email and reflect on the fears. And then I'll see what it generates. And then if we're still not there yet, I might go to another section. Like now include 2 sentences that relates to the desires. So I just pull in section by section and I see how it moves the content. I see how it switches things up. And I feel like I use it like Play-Doh, right? Like I have that foundation and then it's what happens if I do it like this, or what happens if I tell it like that? And so it's just this new process that I always have, where now I'm working back and forth with AI and segments of that without having like an expectation, right? Without being like, I'm going to write an email that calls in this complete point. Because I recognize this way, it's just, I'm more consistent because I'm more like testing instead of trying to like, where does this fit inside my workflow? And so that's just how I think it helps me generate different content, different perspectives. It mixes things up. I know on the forward facing end, other people are resonating in a different way with the content because I'm speaking to different things, right? Some of us take action based on fear. Some of us take action based on desire. Some of us take action on the pain points. So I'm confident in knowing whenever I integrate that, I'm reaching probably someone else that I may not have reached before. But Derek is always telling me, what if you just do it, right? So it's just that, just do it, just pull pieces and see what happens. And don't put that pressure on myself till I have to figure out how to use all this document all at once.
Thank you, Kelly. And I think using it like Play-Doh stuck out to me when you use that metaphor, because it's very much, it can go a lot of different directions. But if you're not actually testing, you're not getting the feedback from your market, then it's just a good informative research paper It's giving you some insights, but what are you going to do with those insights? Are you going to go test it, or are you just going to sit on them? And if you take action, then you get the feedback, and then you keep working through the process. And then you find that like 1 out of 10 just is the 80-20 of a pain point. And you can create more and more content, education, and copy around the stuff that's actually resonating.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple comments if I could. I don't want to dominate too much here, but I have found that having the buyer's blueprint uploaded into any single GPT that I build, just the ability to do that, knowing it's going to be pretty much on point, and I can just start doing what Kelly's talking about, the nuanced stuff from there, is a huge time saver. And the other aspect that I think is has a lot of potential is with marketing managers who need to build out content calendars. And sometimes the content calendar is, let's say you're doing Facebook ads, and maybe they don't want the fear stuff so much. So you can go more toward the aspirations. So you can guide, if we were being strategic consultants to marketing managers, for example, we can guide those marketing managers on how to use this document. I would think that you could build some templates or help, support documents that help them be able to do that task and see that they need to. So that if you're doing an email campaign, maybe email number 1 hits on the welcome sequence. Second one maybe has education. Third one maybe has story. Third one has something else, but each one is hitting on a different facet of what that entire document is providing in a more specific way. The other thing I wanted to mention is that sometimes when we do that, it doesn't initially give it doesn't give what I'm looking for. And I have found that by telling it, hey, you didn't give me what I was looking for, so often it'll come back and say, oh yeah, you're right. And then it will give me what I'm looking for. So sometimes that second cracking the whip on it actually does produce very different results. And I do have one other thing I want to mention, but I'm going to save it for a little bit later.
Classic open loop, Charles. Appreciate that. And the insights, of course, for it. We do have a hard stop here at the top of the hour. And so I want to make sure that we can get to anything. You're not eating up too much time. This is all, I think, really helpful for people watching and getting an idea of how to utilize this, especially as a strategic consultant that's helping companies implement this process, because that's certainly a use case for this. And that's part of the reason we're developing our automation and our system on the back end, is to be an asset and a resource for agencies and marketing consultants and coaches that are working to help get their audience a better insight and understanding of where they're at in the market. And absolutely agree, like supporting documents, templates, and that sort of thing for helping people implement is a great next step. And it's definitely something that's at the top of our list right now for how we can create that, and more than open to any ideas and insights that we can come up with inside of the community. And that goes out to everyone inside of the community for ways to improve this as well, especially if we get good templates developed that everybody can utilize when you get one of these briefs and helping people implement it.
So one of the things that Kelly mentioned that I thought was really helpful is she pulled out sections or went to just specific sections, and it can be a little overwhelming. It's fabulous that a small little prompt can create such a massive insight to what your customer is, but it can also be overwhelming for us mere humans to take 30, 40,000 words at us so quickly. And so I think that's really important to think about it, breaking it down into sections, and maybe even as you used to do in all your recipes, is turning things into variables that can be stored in a document someplace as variables and then just pulled into generic prompts. Yes, I find that really useful to think about it that way.
Well, what I'm working on right now, you're asking how to use the brief. What I'm working on right now is content focused, but it's content focused on the awareness scale, and a person entering into the process or funnel, whatever you want to call it. But I go to the Eugene Schwartz thing, and a piece of content for someone who's entering the scale from start to finish, and how you would educate them on whatever it is you're writing about, product or service, starting out generally, getting very specific, just like the awareness scale does, according to the data that's in the buyer's brief, and also on the initial stages using smaller content and using larger content as it goes down the scale toward a transaction, or at least during the consideration part of it. So I think the brief has every component inside of there for anybody who's in a stage of the awareness scale. And if you look at the book Great Leads, it tells you what kind of lead to use for those people in those stages. Like the unaware is a story lead.
What was the name of that book?
And then there's Great Leads. It's by Michael Fortin. You can find it on Ocean of PDFs, I believe.
It's not Michael Masterson.
Yeah, Masterson and Fortin. It is, yeah, it has what leads to use for each section of that scale, of Eugene Schwartz scale. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good point on the awareness and any stage of the funnel. That's critical to speak to where customers at, where they're at inside of the customer journey. And
right, because otherwise you're going to, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, to Bruce's point on just getting really focused and building off of what Kelly was saying, really focused on specific sections. And again, depending on where you're at inside of a marketing campaign, you might not need the entire brief. And it can certainly be overwhelming just to generate and get the content, but also just take it one step at a time too, as you're getting that out there, and like just the smaller micro bite-sized steps forward, just even start testing. Personally, that's why I like getting a lot more at once and then taking the time to go back through and identifying the things that I see stand out. And so I'm not really consuming an entire brief every time I generate one. I'm just looking for keywords that stand out and that I might want to use as a headline. Like one earlier, Bruce, inside of this was like a dizzying amount of vendors trying to like buy your time for their solutions. And I don't even know if that is what it said, but that's what like my mind articulated. I was like, oh yeah, that could be a good subject line to open up an email conversation with and see if the dizzying element, and like that stuck out to me because of what's a symptom that someone might be feeling as a result of their problem. And if that's just, you feel just like dizzy and over, like that your inbox is spinning with vendors pitching you their product, but they don't actually care about X,
Yeah, it
Y,
would be
or
a
Z, or
John Benson classic hook right there, wouldn't it?
yeah, I know that's what this stuff is for. And that's why I think the Benson tool is really powerful use for like when you want to go into that copywriting side, because you can take a brief like this and you can use Benson for it too, but you can take these variables. And if you have Benson, you can just store them inside of a brief there and use that to run your campaigns. And I've most extensively been using Benson for the cloner tool to test different forms of like copy that I want to spin up. And I'm not going to get in a demonstration of that right now. But also the 1 minute VSL and just straight to the point stuff. That's where, again, you need to be able to guide AI with frameworks anyways. And so if you have the frameworks on your own, you can use this brief as a knowledge bank to say, hey, make your own framework that converts for a good website landing page, turn that into variables using Claude or ChatGPT, and then use completed buyer's brief to say, okay, write this sales page in this framework based on customer segment 7 business executives at health-based startups. And so then it would go and pull from that section of the buyer's brief. And I think we just might have hit the end of the road here with continue the. I've just been running this stuff for you in the background, Bruce. And so I was just seeing how far it could go. And we got all the way down to campaign ideas for the second brief, but it literally went through and created, just while we were having that conversation, the stories and the different customer segments for all the different leads. And so again, I'll put this all in a document for you.
That's amazing.
And so then it's just wrapping up with and we're really at the tail end of it now at this point. And so once you get to the end of the creative strategic brief, there's only a few more sections left. And that is like the style guide, the brand voice, and then your social content and your WH questions. And so
what's the role of the WH questions?
Brainstorming, Kelly. Okay. I think you do a really good job at articulating the positive, negative as well. But and even just filming videos and hooks is, hey, do you run into this problem? Or opening up with a question, or what are the things that I should or could be thinking about that are going to put me into different perspectives from what questions people.
So it's more around hooks for content hooks.
Yes,
true?
and yeah, that would lead into like different forms of content. So like a
Yeah.
hook for like a few of the recent videos I posted on our YouTube or Instagram page. I'm starting to like work with a few different video editors now, so I'm going to be testing out some of that, but just like question and then just seeing how these different videos are getting more or less engagement and posting them on LinkedIn as well.
So Bruce, where I find those like positive and negative questions helpful is it when you're creating any kind of copy where you want to do that, like the self opt-in or that self eliminator. Are you someone who
Mhm.
spins in creating content, gets overwhelmed by, right? Are you someone who, and then that could be all the negatives, or having that, would you love to, and then using some of those positives? How a lot of copy pages and things like that kind of have those like self-eliminating questions. I find that those questions are really useful for that kind of content.
Yeah. Kind of effect.
One of the things that I've been thinking about is a B2B environment where you've got multiple stakeholders that are going to be reviewing a pitch or a copy, and being able to roll out messaging that hits not only the awareness level that Kevin's talking about, but engages them with the appropriate angle that they're looking at it from. For example, an engineer is going to look at something different than, say, a teacher who's going to be using a piece of software. The purchasing department in a school has multiple stakeholders. It would be overwhelming to try to think about building messaging the old manual way for everybody, but this makes possible the ability to do very nuanced, targeted, complete packages for something, for a big company that's rolling out where there's multiple stakeholders. So that's something I'm playing with myself.
Wow. Is that the old strategic selling framework, Charles, that you're referring to? The
Well,
economic buyer, the gatekeepers, the tech spec people, and
yeah, it'd be like that. You're describing what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
not familiar with that framework though, but that's
Oh
the
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, it was the most years ago. It was one of the most famous books on complex selling, where you had multiple buyers in any organization, and they defined all the roles and what their key aspects were. And it'd be fantastic to take that strategic selling 2.0 book, feed it in, pull out the frameworks, and then use that, just like you said, for a salesperson to create all those unique messages for, is it the IT department? Is it the purchasing department? Is it the head of the operations group that's actually running it? You're sending a new customer service program, right? So you had a customer service, but then you've got the CIO and the president signing off on the money. So yeah, all those different messages. Really interesting to think about that.
And to be able to attack each one of those at the appropriate awareness level, because you've got information from them that you've gathered in forms of surveys and that sort of thing. Because an engineer may be completely aware of a certain product, whereas a principal or somebody like that might be unaware. So they're going to land in different places. And then Darby, just real quick, since I'm going to say this and I'll be done, is one thing I'd love to see if this could ever do when you're at the initial stage here. Wouldn't it be cool if your script could go out on the internet and gather voice of customer quotes and pull into the recipe, so you actually have it that is getting from.
Talk a little bit more about what you mean by the voice of customer.
Let's say that you have some dentists that are on a forum somewhere discussing something about whatever the topic might be, that you're actually being able to extract out from the internet what they're actually saying, or off of Amazon reviews, for example, so that you're getting the actual voice of VOC, voice of customer, to be able to pull in, so that there'd be some of that in the recipes.
It's a great idea. We're also working on other advancements to this, like all of the stuff I'm going to be taking into our notes and like what we can do for the next stages once the book is launched. Like also like polling those forums and the actual direct associations that these customers are with, in terms of like, where would you even go talk to someone to get in front of that audience in the first place? Again, we've started working with that. Okay, here's some of it, but I think there's some stuff that we're going to be working on and going into a lot more detail at the hackathon next week about what does that look like for additional build outs. And I'm also shocked at how much it's producing on the social media side here for you, Bruce. And compared to ChatGPT, again, this is the first time I ran this with Claude 3 that just came out this week. And so I'm looking at it from a perspective of, let's see what it can do here with, what did we start with?
Yes.
And it's keeping the context too all the way through, and it's angled towards enterprise right now and like micro content right here. Probably one more continue away, and perfect because we got less than 10 minutes before we wrap up this call. Have a completed Claude 3 edition of Buyer's Brief for you.
Darby, is there anything we need to get ready for next week? Anything we need to be prepared with?
Mostly just like a big idea or project that you're looking to like make some big progress forward on. Like I'm going to be working on our automation and preparing for like a presentation from like stage and like running just the whole process with running the automation in real time. But then also we're bringing the people together as a mastermind to collectively be able to help support each other along the way. And so we'll have a few different sections of the day. And I know we talked about it, Kelly, and we've got it mapped out, but first few hours of the day are going to be getting set up, brainstorming, hot seat stuff. And what's the number one problem that you got right now that you're looking to solve or fix in terms of like your business that we're going to use AI to help streamline? Having lunch also, hanging out, connecting, collaborating, just sharing and supporting each other along the way. Have the room to be able to, create at the same time. And so come with something you want to move the needle on, and then like, where are you maybe stuck in it? And what are you looking for support in terms of help moving forward? And then we'll get work done. And then we'll probably go to do some stuff at the end of the day after we wrap up. But maybe I'm missing anything, Kelly, but that's the gist of it for.
I think that's about right. Staking our claim in the ground in terms of what we want to accomplish, having some morning focus time, breaking for lunch. It can be a working lunch for people who are like in their groove, and then coming back together for a check-in. Here's where I'm stuck. Here's what I've accomplished. And then going back in for an afternoon, one more afternoon focus session.
And the location we're going to be at, it's going to be sweet. Got a hot tub.
I was gonna say, then we're gonna hot tub.
We got pool tables, we got video games, we got cornhole, we've got the whole 9 yards. We got shade. We got a big tree in the backyard. It's got a lot of shade. South by Southwest is going to be in full swing. Got a dinner that we're going to be doing the night before. If you're in town, Kevin, let me know. Send out an email about a head count, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I responded. I'll be there.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
I'm totally sad. I'm going to miss that whole thing.
We're sad you're not going to be here.
Me too. Send your AI assistant.
I'll send your fireflies.
Somebody's got to fix that ragged dancing spider down there that Claude has. That's really bad.
It's annoying.
It looks like a mutated version of the HubSpot logo mixed with like Snooze Eatery. If any of you guys know that breakfast chain, I've always thought that.
I find it strangely like satisfying for some reason.
I wish they would have used our logo. They didn't even ask.
So just think of it like it's a neural network.
Right.
To give you a little more positive association there.
I think we had a pretty productive call today, guys. I mean, the conversation obviously revolved a little bit around the buyer's brief and how we were using it. And I appreciate you guys all like giving the feedback and support over the past a few years as part of the community and as we've grown and being a part of the development of it, because it certainly wouldn't have gotten to this point without your feedback and support along the way. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for being a part of that. And then I'm really looking forward to just getting the book out in one version of official form on the 14th. Unless I can figure out all the bells and all the T's and I's for the paperback version, we'll probably start with just the Kindle and maybe a few days after for the actual paperback. I need to submit it by like tomorrow to get everything done, and it might not just be buttoned up, but Kindle should be good to go. Of course, we can always edit and update it afterwards, and so I'm not too worried about it. It's just hitting that deadline. And also, I'm going to jump back over here, but I just want to show you guys what you can expect once the book is ready inside of the membership portal. If you're part of the community right now, you obviously already will have access to this, but if you buy the book, then this will be something that you will have access to as well. Oh no, wait a minute. What's going on?
And we can buy the book on,
It
the
will
link
be
is
available.
somewhere on Circle.
It will be available on Amazon whenever it comes out there, but we also have got the links in Circle, and it's just university.com/bb book. if you want to share that with anyone too. But I'm building this out over the next week to just, this is where all the content's going to live inside. So it's really easy to access and it's not just spread over a bunch of random links everywhere. So you have one login, you'll get in, you'll have access, and this will be the initial front part of the book. I'll have the resources built out here inside of the parts. So it's going to be part one is going to be just a full example, fully built out market sauce method buyer's brief whenever we generated it. That's going to include all the sections of part two, which is going to be the recipe that has the prompts or ingredients or whatever instructions you want to call them that are going to help you with creating all the elements of your buyer's brief that you see in part one. And then part three, so you can see I'm right here. We're going to have an introduction, which honestly, maybe this call would be a good introduction to the brief for those that are just getting exposed to it to see a lot of the different use cases. So I might include that here. And then we'll have 20 plus case studies of different briefs and examples that we've got submitted through the community that we're going to share. And then we'll just keep building it out. This is the workshop that we did a few months ago that kind of initially introduced the market sauce method and how we're using that to create these briefs. And then right here is where a lot of my focus has been as well with the book, is creating a complimentary video podcast mini series that ended up being about 6 total episodes. So basically breaking down each section of this brief so that you guys can get a very direct, anyone that's going through this book can get a very direct, this is each section, this is what it is, straight to the point. I've filmed it all in less than a 1 hour time period. And so we're chopping it up and we're bringing it out. So it's not going to take a ton of time, but it's going to complement each section of the book. And then obviously you're going to actually get good at this if you go and run it and do the work and practice and get into a flow of doing it for yourself. And then obviously you can hire me to do it for you because we've got the system and stuff to automate it. But also this is the foundation of all of our content strategy, everything that we teach anyways and have taught for the last 2-3 years here in the community. I think it's an important thing for anyone to have a working knowledge of how these briefs work and how they operate and where they can be utilized, so that if you're not going to make it, you can at least have someone on your team learn how to make it, or know that whoever you're working with inside of the community and anyone that licenses our system from us that is also integrating it into their process, that we're going to have educational material around this that's going to continue to grow so that more people can get more informed on this process and be able to actually put the stuff into action. And obviously the more feedback we get, the better results we're going to get from across the board as we build up the automations in the back end. I do not plan on writing another book this year after this. More than enough work. Oh boy.
Just get a hold of Chris Landon. He'll figure it out for you in 2 seconds.
Exactly. No, Chris's book stuff is pretty great right now, and he's got
It is,
really
yeah.
cool stuff on the back end of that I know he's just going to keep working on building out.
He's using me as a guinea pig right now. Yesterday, I did a 90-minute presentation on using AI in remote work while taking advantage of geographical arbitrage for UX, UI designers. And so we're going to take that webinar and create a book out of it.
All right. That's
to
awesome.
see what that looks like.
Yeah, keep me posted how that goes. We'll probably talk about it next week, I'm sure, but I'd love to hear how that looks because I know it's a very fast turnaround with what Chris is working on when he gets the automations going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good job, Darby. You've done well to get all this done and implemented.
Thank you. And perfect timing too, as we come here to the end of today's call. 59 minutes in, we are on idea number 9 of 10 of the WH questions that wrapped up your buyer's brief from Claude 3. Or this could potentially be an entirely new offer. It depends on your imagination and what you bring to the table, and just testing and validating ideas before you spend 4 months trying to put all this stuff together on your own and banging your head into the laptop screen because you're doing all of this research manually. What a shame it would be to not have this as part of your tool belt to save time and headache across the board. And we wrap up that conclusion. And we wrap up today's call. So I appreciate you guys here. Book launches March 14th. We've got a live virtual launch that we're going to be doing from the Mastermind Hackathon in Austin, Texas. And until then, guys, until next time, keep calm and AI on, and we'll see you guys on the other side. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.